So how long have you been living here?
I've been living in Tucson for about 36 years.
And you live around here?
I live about 15 minutes.
Okay,
from here.
15 minutes. So what do you think happened here? As you being a Tucson resident, what's your gut telling you?
My gut is telling me that it's the brother-in-law or the son-in-law.
Son-in-law. Why?
Just too many things. You know, he had pictures. There was a picture or two that came out, and you haven't seen him since. You haven't heard from him.
Radio silent.
The other people have, the family, Savannah and, her brother and sister have done things. He hasn't been involved in any of it, and I don't know if he's trying to stay away from the limelight or what it is, but I can tell you this, it's very suspicious to me.
There is new activity in the search for Nancy Guthrie and possibly someone being detained in the case. Investigators have blocked off a street in her neighborhood.
Forensic teams have arrived alongside a tactical SWAT unit to secure the perimeter. The mother of television personality Savannah Guthrie was abducted from her Tucson residence nearly 2 weeks ago. Reporter Michelle Fisher is joining us live now. Michelle, the atmosphere inside was heavy and completely silent. The shutter clicks sounded like rhythmic tapping as spotlights focused on the man seated alone at the mahogany table. Tomaso Cioni remained motionless with his fingers interlaced, his legal counsel positioned right next to him. For a long duration, he uttered nothing. He secured representation early on, declining every interview request and disregarding both the media and investigators. After choosing to remain silent for weeks, he finally prepared to talk as a journalist spoke up. "Mr. Cioni," she whispered, "do you have any comments regarding Nancy Guthrie?" He looked up, appearing exhausted and teary-eyed. He moved toward the microphone and whispered a confirmation, causing everyone to hold their breath. "I have a statement to make." Flashbulbs popped while reporters scribbled furiously in the tense room. "For weeks," he explained, "the public has assumed I harmed Nancy." He stopped as his lawyer offered support. He took a difficult breath before explaining that the reality is far more intricate than people imagine. The press corps shifted closer as a murmur rippled through. He admitted to being present that evening. Shock filled the air when he confessed to returning to the house, though the events were unforeseen. That was the moment everything shifted on February 1st, 2026. Under the desert sun in Tucson, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie lived in a quiet, well-kept suburban home. She would vanish before nightfall. She was a woman of great significance. A grandmother and mother to 5 children, she had previously served as a college official. Between church service and baking treats for her grandkids, she relied on a pacemaker for her heart. Though her health was delicate, her resolve remained firm until that tragic day in February. Nancy vanished under chilling circumstances involving a discarded heart device and sabotage surveillance. There were no broken locks or shattered panes to suggest a violent break-in. It appeared the intruder was a welcome guest, leading police to the final person who saw her. That individual turned out to be her son-in-law, a man named Tomaso Cioni. He held legal authority over her estate, managing her bank accounts and various personal choices. Shortly before her disappearance, a garage door was positioned specifically to obstruct a security lens. That seemingly minor occurrence would eventually become a pivotal piece of the puzzle. His immediate decision to seek counsel and stay quiet left many people feeling deeply unsettled for weeks. Federal agents eventually stepped in, executing search warrants for digital devices and financial documentation. A grainy recording showed a hooded individual, while various ransom demands were dismissed as fraudulent. Savannah Guthrie made emotional televised appearances, pleading for her mother's safe return. A $100,000 bounty was posted. Yet Tomaso maintained his silence until this very afternoon. Back at the briefing, he softly claimed that none of this was ever his intention. The statement lingered. What was he implying? His cryptic admission only deepened the mystery, opening a fresh path for the investigation. By confessing his presence at the house, he finally validated the long-held suspicions of the authorities. He remained present. Eyelids fluttered shut for a moment. A dispute occurred, he claimed. Low whispers rippled across the chamber. A fight. About what? Nancy had reached 84 years. Whatever sparked such a massive conflict, the counsel tilted ahead. This defendant refuses to address inquiries, the attorney stated resolutely. He shall recite a drafted text. Tomaso gave a nod. He smoothed out a parchment page. Fingers shook just barely. Nancy intended to alter things, he recited. Review vital adjustments. Adjustments to what? Her legacy, wealth, plus legal authority. Journalists wrote fast. I returned to converse, he went on. That covers everything. Vocal tones broke for one brief moment. I never arrived intending any injury. Yet events transpired within those specific walls. Events resulting in a torn-out medical device, smashed lenses, plus red stains upon the tiles. He glanced upward once more. Fear seized me, he whispered. The hall turned quiet once more. Why did terror strike? What vision appeared? What actions followed? For several weeks, detectives discussed electronic logs from Nancy's pulse monitor. These devices track cardiac pulses. They track chronology. They inform physicians if patterns shift. 21 days passed, per informants. Sleuths challenged Tomaso using facts they kept strictly confidential. Particulars regarding the schedule. Details concerning exactly when that pulse regulator failed, plus indications of activity within the residence. Yet they withheld that secret from everyone until today. Tomaso dropped his document. I discovered her lying down, he uttered. A collective gasp rose from the gallery. Injury had occurred. In what way? By what? He moved his head. I attempted assistance. Moisture pooled within his gaze. Confusion overwhelmed my senses. However, the tale continued. Errors were committed, he confessed. Grave errors. He confessed to breaking surveillance. He confessed to extracting the cardiac equipment. He confessed to delaying the phone call to 911 immediately. Shocks echoed, then he uttered a phrase that froze the assembly. Another person was present. Stillness. The audience appeared to hold its breath. Whatever did that imply? Provided Nancy lacked solitude, who else stayed? Did a second individual inhabit that home then? Could the hidden face from previous recordings relate? Did Tomaso shield an accomplice or cast guilt? He stared at the wooden desk. Further details are restricted, he claimed. His representative rose. We conclude our session. Journalists yelled inquiries. Which others were present? Does Nancy survive? Where lies the corpse? Yet Tomaso remained silent. He exited the judicial hall. Suddenly, the quietness persisting for many days shattered, only to be filled by something far more chilling. Since this investigation transitioned beyond mere doubt, it focused on key confession. He validated his return to the site. He verified a conflict existed. He verified taking actions during those hours. Plus, he verified Nancy was not by herself. Beyond the courthouse, media vehicles parked along the road. Mobiles vibrated throughout the nation. Savannah Guthrie allegedly observed the briefing in real time. What response would follow? For days, she supported seeking the truth. For a long duration, she refrained from openly blaming her relative. Today, fresh evidence emerged. But did it suffice? Within the task force, officers started re-examining prior clues from a fresh perspective. The shut garage portal obscuring the lens, zero signs of forced burglary, the silent canine during those hours, chronology from rideshare logs, the monitor's concluding pulse, and the narrow crimson path. Should Tomaso have actually discovered Nancy wounded, then what caused the harm? If a stranger occupied the residence, why remain hidden? Why delay talking for many weeks? While twilight descended upon Tucson tonight, the mystery grew significantly grimmer because speech had finally occurred. Phrases alter reality, yet they rarely provide total transparency to the observers. Various specialists suggested this might spark indictments, blocking legal proceedings, manipulating clues, perhaps even darker crimes. However, critics cautioned that the physical remains are missing. A complete admission remains absent, plus numerous mysteries still linger. Where has Nancy gone? Did she survive during that specific medical equipment extraction? Which other person inhabited that dwelling? Precisely what events occurred between the initial spat and the terror? That evening of February 1st remains mysterious, though a single element shifted. Whenever fragments relocate, the entire perspective eventually evolves. The problem persists. Does this expose reality or mask darker secrets? Plus, what detectives claim they found regarding Nancy's heart logs could prove to be the vital clue. Furthermore, whatever facts authorities unearthed regarding Nancy's monitor logs might be the primary discovery. Since medical regulators provide more than pulse support, they track duration, they track cadence, they log every mechanical failure. 21 days before Tomaso testified, sleuths discreetly obtained comprehensive logs from Nancy's heart specialist. It revealed a weird anomaly. At 8:42 p.m., Nancy's pulse shifted abruptly, skipping any gradual decline for a sharp, unnatural break. By 8:47 p.m., sensors caught motion. Medical data logged severe cardiac trauma at 8:52 p.m. Just 11 minutes later, every single transmission went dark. This wasn't a technical glitch or a drained battery. Someone physically extracted it. These facts directly contradicted Tomaso's initial statements to the authorities. His attorney originally insisted that he had departed from the residence early that night, never once coming back to the property. Tracking data, however, put his handset at the location after 8:30 p.m. By admitting he returned in his statement, the entire investigation was flipped. Investigators met within a cramped Tucson police briefing room, where a collage of family snapshots covered the corkboard, showing a happy Nancy. There were images of her with grandkids and gardening, pinned next to grainy surveillance captures of a hooded person lurking by the fence. Evidence included a black vehicle idling nearby and a garage door positioned precisely to obscure the lens of the security system. Detective Morales indicated the 8:42 p.m. timestamp on the board. Trauma began then, she noted, activity at 8:47, removal at 9:03. Addressing the squad, she whispered that 11 minutes passed between the initial medical alarm and the final, haunting silence. In the quiet, a colleague questioned how the heart monitor remained functional if she had been discovered in a wounded state. Silence followed as the metrics indicated Nancy remained alive throughout that brief period, suggesting a swift, deliberate act occurred just as news crews swarmed the precinct exterior. Savannah Guthrie issued a brief written statement. She demanded absolute honesty for her mother, stating they would remain fully engaged with the ongoing criminal probe. Although his name went unspoken, her intent was obvious as the internal bonds of the family began to shatter completely. Annie, the victim's daughter, initially defended her husband, assuring everyone she knew that he was incapable of committing such a violent crime. Her stance shifted once he confessed to sabotaging the security cameras. He acknowledged pulling the pacemaker and choosing panic over calling for help. These were serious revelations. Every choice had repercussions, and soon residents began providing statements to the press. A witness recalled hearing an intense argument, while a second neighbor spotted car lights cutting through the late-night gloom. One resident noted the victim's pet began yapping loudly at 8:45 p.m., though the next detail was truly bizarre. The animal went mute instantly, suggesting a recognizable face had hushed it, a realization that sent shivers through the team. Canines typically react to outsiders but stay calm for relatives, leading authorities to scrutinize the electronic defenses once more. The bay door was positioned specifically to blind the driveway lens several days prior, leaving a gap that obscured the vision. Questioned previously, he claimed it was simply a way to block the intense solar glare. That excuse now rang hollow, proving the perpetrator had mapped out the blind spots long before the actual destruction occurred. This returns us to his claim that she was not by herself. Reviewing the logs, police found he took a 14-second incoming call precisely at 8:31 p.m. An unsaved contact prompted a 9-second return call 5 minutes later, raising questions about the identity of the mysterious participant. Detectives tracked the mobile number. The connection led to a burner purchased with cash shortly before February 1st, which pinged nearby before going completely dark. A person in a disguise surfaced on film at 9:15 p.m., rushing away with their features hidden by a hood. Did this individual operate the untraceable device, or was their presence merely a random occurrence? As findings accumulated, the narrative grew denser, eventually leading Annie to challenge her husband following his recent public admission. Insiders say she confronted him with one question: who else was there? His vague response created a domestic tension far more deafening than his public refusal to speak, while lawyers weighed potential indictments. Destroying evidence, hindering the law, and neglecting to report a fatality. Lacking physical remains complicated the case. Did she perish then? Or was she transported elsewhere by an unknown accomplice? Officers discreetly combed the Tucson wilderness. Analysts scanned highway feeds toward Mexico, recalling how he was flagged during a standard roadside check near the state line earlier. That encounter appeared irrelevant initially, but now his presence near the international boundary shortly after the disappearance felt suspicious. While he cited professional reasons, the police remained skeptical, especially as bank statements began to reveal a complex hidden agenda. Word was out that Nancy intended to revise her final testament. She'd set an appointment with her lawyer for February 3rd, just 2 days post-vanishing. This fresh legal document aimed to strip Tomaso of his monetary control. To those watching, that single detail provided a clear reason for foul play. Yet, intent isn't evidence. Solid verification is vital for a high-profile national scandal. Suddenly, a subtle breakthrough emerged from the shadows. Crime scene units re-evaluated the blood spatters found inside the residence. The minor stains didn't suggest a brawl, yet they traced a path through the corridor straight to the carport, avoiding the lawn and main entrance. That specific bay had its shutter closed. It was the exact spot where surveillance lenses couldn't see. Detectives analyzed the cement surfacing. Near the outlet, they discovered minuscule threads, dusky strands resembling heavy-duty transport padding typically utilized for shifting furniture or bodies. Should Nancy have been relocated? Someone likely hoisted her. Enveloped and masked? One culprit or a pair? Keep Tomaso's hint in mind. She wasn't solo. If his account holds, a silent witness possesses the full truth. A final chapter remains whispered in the dark. Jurors assembled in secret. People took the stand. Tech specialists broke down the cardiac implant's logs. Money experts reviewed bank logs. Relatives shared their accounts. Bit by bit, the clues constructed a chronological sequence. However, schedules lack feeling. What transpired within those walls during that 11-minute window? Did a slip occur? A shove? Or a tumble? Was it a heated clash or a cold, calculated scheme? Sleuths suspect that evening's meal contains the key. Call logs confirm a takeout order. 2 portions arrived at 7:12 p.m. Clearly, Nancy was breathing and dining. But who occupied the chair opposite her? What words were exchanged? Why did the vibe shift? What triggered her pulse at 8:42 p.m.? Why extract a life-saving tool rather than dial 911? As tension peaked, the state started drafting an indictment. They proceeded with caution. Once the gavel drops on an arrest, the path is set. Should an accomplice exist, they might still be lurking in the shadows, observing and biding time. Perhaps they're terrified. People grasped fragments of the tale. Though the puzzle remained incomplete, Tomaso spoke up, yet kept his secrets. Rather, he unlatched a fresh portal, one leading straight to February 1st, to that meal, that dispute, and that exact heartbeat fluctuation. To grasp the actual truth, we must re-enter that dwelling, revisit that date, and reconstruct every 60-second interval what occurred between an 84-year-old matriarch and her closest circle. Returning to February 1st, 2026, dusk had already swallowed Tucson. The horizon transitioned from deep indigo into an obsidian void. Within the Guthrie residence, kitchen lamps cast a gentle glow. Nancy walked with deliberate, sluggish grace. Despite being 84, she maintained her tidy dining habits. One saucer, a creased linen, a cup of liquid. Beneath her chest, the electronic regulator hummed, maintaining her pulse's cadence. At 7:12 p.m., the bell sounded. Takeout for 2 arrived. That specific point is vital. A duo of plates, not a solo. Nancy wouldn't eat twice. Records indicate Tomaso's profile handled the purchase. He'd visited the premises beforehand. Local residents spotted his vehicle parked outside near 6:30 p.m. Authorities verified his mobile signal connected nearby during those hours, suggesting the supper was a deliberate meeting. This feast was prearranged. Evidence confirms they shared the meal. The courier mentioned the male recipient appeared visibly stressed. The driver caught a female tone within. No shouting was heard, merely a standard conversation. At 7:40 p.m., Nancy's landline reached out to her legal counsel. The attempt hit an answering machine. Though the recording was incomplete, technicians retrieved a handful of fragmented phrases. Crucial revision. Feeling uneasy. Morning. The audio snapped. Did she mean her inheritance papers? Regarding her representation or perhaps Tomaso? Certainty is elusive, yet that clip remains a vital clue. Near 8:20 p.m., bystanders noted elevated tones, not shrieks, but definitely beyond typical volume levels. Given Nancy's serene, quiet demeanor, such vocal intensity was entirely out of character. At 8:31 p.m., a brief 14-second ping hit Tomaso's burner. Detectives still lack the dialogue's content. Immediately following that contact, the atmosphere shifted. At 8:42 p.m., the heart monitor logged an emergency. Physicians clarified the data. Her cardiac rhythm surged wildly, then faltered, mirroring intense terror or physical agony. 5 minutes afterward, at 8:47 p.m., The tech detected bodily shifting. It wasn't just a slight shift or a slow stroll. It was a sudden, violent lurch as if her frame jolted. Then, at 8:52 post-meridium, the cardiac device logged a far more alarming event. Medical professionals define this as a critical cardiac episode. In plain English, her heart was failing fast. Deeply dire circumstances. What transpired during those 10 minutes? Did she trip? Was she shoved? Did she lose consciousness in the heat of a dispute? We are now stepping into the residence where investigators suspect the tragedy actually took place. The dinner table had been tidied up. One plate remained half-eaten. Another was nearly empty. A single chair sat crookedly. No signs of a struggle. No broken glass. Yet, the atmosphere was likely suffocating. Insiders believe Nancy informed Tomaso of her intent to rewrite her will. She likely broke the news that she was stripping him of his power over her estate. Such a move breeds desperation. Greed and dominance can warp a person's soul. At 8:40 post-meridium, digital forensics showed Tomaso's device migrated from the kitchen toward the corridor. 2 minutes later, at 8:42, Nancy's pulse skyrocketed. Detectives suspect that was the exact moment the peace was shattered. One prevailing theory posits that Nancy stood her ground. Perhaps she demanded that he pack his bags and get out. Maybe she threatened to call the authorities. Perhaps she confessed her total lack of trust. If tempers were flared, the situation was a powder keg. What occurs when a heated confrontation unfolds in a cramped hallway? The walls start closing in. Shouts echo. Gestures turn aggressive. A hand reaches out. A wrist is gripped. Or a shove is delivered with too much force. An 84-year-old frame is incredibly delicate, truly brittle. A tumble for a youngster might only result in a few scrapes. For someone of Nancy's vintage, it means shattered bones or death. The modest blood spatter found later implies a fall-related injury rather than a brutal beating. The console table in the entry featured a jagged wooden edge. Forensics took precise measurements of its height. It lined up perfectly with Nancy's wounds. While not definitive proof, the evidence is damnably aligned. At 8:47 post-meridium, the pacemaker detected motion. Maybe she collapsed. Maybe she might have still possessed consciousness. Then, at 8:52 p.m., her cardiac rhythm fell into crisis. Tomaso would later characterize this specific moment as sheer panic. He maintains he discovered her collapsed on the flooring, yet the sequence of events indicates his presence inside the residence throughout the verbal confrontation. So, was he the one who found her, or was he standing right there during her fall? That distinction is critical. Instead of contacting 911 at 8:52 p.m., no urgent call was placed, no medical transport requested, and no hospital visited. Instead, crime scene experts suspect a different scenario unfolded. At 8:55 p.m., Tomaso's mobile device went completely dark. No outgoing signals occurred, though GPS records track his movement toward the parking area. At 9:03 p.m., the monitoring signal from Alafasi Yankee's heart regulator ceased. It had been forcibly extracted. Surgeons explain that disconnecting a pacemaker requires significant physical exertion. It is not an easy task. It is not gentle. It is never done for the patient's welfare. Why would someone remove it? Some analysts suspect it was an attempt to obscure the exact moment of passing. These devices document every single heartbeat. Once the unit is pulled, all data logging terminates. If an individual aimed to create chronological ambiguity, taking out the monitor would achieve that. However, such an act requires deliberate thought even during a crisis. It is a major choice. Was this truly blind panic or a specific fear of discovery? The trail of stains led directly toward the garage, not toward any exit or source of aid, but deep into the garage. The very garage where all security lenses had been obstructed. The garage where subtle cleaning marks were eventually detected. The stall where a faint rubber tread was lifted at 9:15 p.m. while a hooded person fled the area. Was that individual departing the scene, arriving, or merely a passerby? Detectives cannot verify this yet, but keep the prepaid mobile in mind. It transmitted a signal near the residence at 8:40 p.m. and again around 9:10 p.m. Then, the connection vanished forever. Inside the home, investigators suspect Nancy might have still been breathing at 8:52 p.m., but by 9:03 p.m., the heart monitor went silent. We cannot confirm if life remained within her during the extraction. That haunting uncertainty continues to linger over the entire case. Here is what is certain. No one reached out for help. Instead, surveillance was sabotaged, evidence was erased, and Nancy was gone. If Tomaso worked alone, he would have struggled to relocate the body. If an accomplice were present, they could have assisted in the task. This leads us back to his initial testimony. She was not by herself. If a second individual entered the house that evening, who were they? What was their motivation for being there? Were they invited guests, or did they appear because of that 14-second telephone connection? Authorities now suspect that brief dialogue served as a signal, a warning, or a coordinate. This suggests the incident was likely not a random accident. The situation might have been escalating for several days. Nancy had already finalized a scheduled appointment with her legal representative. Major transitions were approaching. Power was being redistributed, and for some individuals, the loss of dominance feels like a total catastrophe. But this only accounts for a portion of the night, because after 9:15 p.m., more movements occurred, more clues surfaced, and more questions remained. The events that transpired between 9:15 p.m. and midnight might actually be the most vital pieces of the entire puzzle. The events that transpired between 9:15 p.m. and midnight might actually be the most vital pieces of the entire puzzle. At 9:18 p.m., Tomaso's smartphone was reactivated. It had remained completely stagnant for nearly 20 minutes. The power wasn't totally cut, but there was no activity, no light, no engagement. Then suddenly, it traveled from the garage toward the kitchen area and back. Forensic teams believe this interval was used for physical relocation, sanitizing the scene, reflection, and final decision-making. At 9:26 p.m., a short text was dispatched from Tomaso's device. The message was not lengthy. It contained just one specific word sent to an unidentified number. That same burner phone. That handset never provided a reply, yet cellular records place it within a 2-mile radius of the residence at that exact time. That single word "handled" has evolved into a cornerstone of the legal case. Handled what? A dispute? A mistake? Or a victim? Detectives later grilled Tomaso regarding that specific text. His response was curt. "I don't recall." Yet digital forensics never forget. At 9:41 p.m., a car was captured pulling away from the driveway very slowly. A neighbor's security system 3 houses down recorded the headlights. The footage is quite blurry, but specialists argue the silhouette aligns perfectly with the frame of Tomaso's SUV. The automobile paused for a moment near the post box, then proceeded down the road. No one spotted Nancy inside. No one saw any other person. Yet the manner in which the vehicle traveled seemed very deliberate, not frantic, not desperate, just careful. By 10:07 p.m., Tomaso's phone connected to a mast on the eastern edge of Tucson, a significant distance away. That spot was near an expanse of desert, an area lacking streetlights, residences, or any form of camera surveillance. Our team of investigators explored that region several weeks later. They identified tire tracks near a dirt path. They located areas of disturbed earth, yet they failed to find Nancy. Not at that time. By 11:12 p.m., his phone returned to the vicinity of his house. He made 0 emergency reports or family calls. At 7:15 the following morning, he messaged Annie, "Your mother isn't picking up her phone." That specific message is currently being heavily scrutinized because cell records prove he was inside the house late the previous evening. Why act like he just noticed the trouble if he already knew? He called 911 at 8:03 a.m. He sounded strangely composed. Some called it cold. He reported Nancy gone and noted the broken tech. He spoke of blood, but skipped the fight. He never mentioned going back to the house. He hid the fact that he pulled the pacemaker. The truth surfaced weeks later, only after long silence, only after the device logs were pulled, only after the legal heat intensified. Nowadays, the state is building a tight narrative. They are being careful because every second counts. The 11 minutes of panic, the 20 minutes of radio silence, the word "handled," the desert signal. Each fact is a fragment of the truth. Evidence does not lie. It just waits to be solved. Meanwhile, Savannah's desperate plea hit the airwaves again. She stood on the lawn weeks ago, crying. "If you have info, please help us," she begged. Now the mystery has shifted. Does a witness already have the answers? If an accomplice exists, they are drowning in their own secrets. Detectives have been quietly questioning people associated with the husband's professional life. A former staffer recalled odd cash movements before February 1st. Another saw Tomaso acting erratic and nervous lately. Reports also suggest Nancy had flagged some fishy bookkeeping, starting with small debts, then huge ones. Was that the spark for the murder? Was that dinner an apology or an ambush? One more clue adds weight. At 9:34 p.m., in that window before the vehicle left, the home network logged a system entry. The login was perfect. The feeds were deactivated manually, not smashed, then broken physically much later. That implies the intruder had the code. And Nancy never shared her private passwords with anyone. Tomaso had the keys. But what about that burner phone? The masked man? That handled text. The jury continues to weigh the proof. Tech experts, medical examiners, and family members testify. The legal stakes are now massive. Was Nancy's death an accident followed by a panicked cover-up? Or was it a cold-blooded plan that went sideways? Those are two very different crimes. A fatal fall during a domestic dispute might result in a manslaughter charge. But faking the scene, stealing medical tech, and dumping a body is something far more sinister. The relatives are split. Some see real pain, others see a performance. He has since moved out. Broken trust is nearly impossible to fix. And one haunting question remains louder than the rest. Where is she? Without a body, the investigation remains in limbo. Search crews are returning to the desert where the tower ping was found. Dogs and radar will scan. If Nancy was buried there that night, the soil might finally reveal the truth. And if another person was in that room, they might be watching this broadcast right now, realizing the walls are closing in and proof is mounting. Silence cannot last. Tomaso finally spoke. But did he give the full story or just the parts he could not hide? Authorities believe a single missing detail between 9:15 and 9:41 p.m. remains the key to it all. That missing link will decide his fate. It will change everything. Because during those 26 minutes, a pivotal event occurred inside those four walls. Cops believe that was when the lie was born. It was not about the fight or calling for help, but about the cover-up. Look closely. At 9:17 p.m., the garage sensor registered a partial opening, just halfway up, then quickly shut. 3 minutes later, it opened fully, then closed. Why toggle the door like that? Detectives suspect someone was testing the line of sight, checking for any witnesses on the street. But the lens was already blocked days prior, so the killer knew the blind spots. At 9:22 p.m., the security hub caught movement in the garage, even without the video. It lasted 46 seconds. 46 seconds is plenty of time to move a heavy object or a body. Nancy was petite, but dead weight is hard to lift alone, especially when your hands are shaking. Technicians eventually found a scuff near the garage ledge, where something was likely dragged or dropped. At 9:24 p.m., Tomaso's mobile momentarily paired with the SUV's wireless system. Although the motor remained off, the electronics engaged. Clearly, someone had just unlatched the door. Perhaps a body or an object was loaded. By 9:26 p.m., that handled text flew out. That specific term haunts the file. Handled, not assisted, or mistake. It rings with cold, absolute finality. By 9:29 p.m., Nancy's home network recorded a fresh login attempt on the alarm console. On this occasion, someone switched the unit to service mode, killing all outgoing signals to the dispatchers. This silenced every automatic SOS. Such a move demands insider technical expertise. One needs a code and steady nerves, as blind terror rarely produces such calculated digital tampering. Around 9:34 p.m., a hand reached out and flipped the outdoor floodlight off. Witnesses swore she never doused that light. It was her nightly shield. Yet that evening, darkness swallowed the yard. At 9:41 p.m., the vehicle crept from the driveway, ghostly and deliberate, hoping to slip away unnoticed. Moving toward East Tucson by 10:07 p.m., GPS tracked the SUV toward that desolate trail detectives eventually combed. By 10:12 p.m., the device went stationary for 9 full minutes. 9 minutes idling in the void, enough for a hurried burial, a hidden drop, or a dark rendezvous. Don't forget, that burner phone also hit a tower near the scrubland at 10:05 p.m. Dual devices, shared coordinates, a coincidence too heavy to dismiss. Investigators suspect Tomaso had a shadow partner. However, caution prevails. Suspicion isn't a verdict, and building an airtight case takes time. Morning light revealed a bizarre scene to the officers. There were only trace amounts of crimson visible. Security lenses were smashed, yet the rooms remained eerily orderly, scrubbed clean after a moment of pure horror. Upon questioning regarding the broken surveillance gear, he suggested thieves were responsible, yet no doors were kicked in nor glass shattered. Meanwhile, Nancy's tiny pup remained eerily composed, showing no signs of distress or fear. Had an outsider breached the home, that terrier would have raised a deafening alarm. Yet, witnesses noted the barking vanished instantly, suggesting a familiar hand had soothed the beast into silence. Bond and betrayal. Nancy clearly welcomed her visitor inside that evening. They dined, conversed, and disagreed. Then, the atmosphere curdled into something lethal. Currently, the grand jury is dissecting one mystery. When did the motive shift from civil talk to murder? Was the meal a trap? Word had spread that Nancy intended to rewrite her final testament. Watching a fortune slip through your fingers breeds a desperation that can spark a truly monstrous decision. Yet, a chilling anomaly remains. At 8:58 p.m., while Nancy's pulse began to falter, a smart speaker snagged a stray 4-second audio clip from the room. A sudden noise had jolted the voice assistant into recording. After weeks of digital scrubbing, experts uncovered a plea that paralyzed the investigators. Nancy whispering, "Please." A heavy impact followed that single word, then nothingness. Was it a prayer or a final beg? A mercy request or a cry for aid? Detectives let that tape echo before the jurors. Heads bowed as the gravity of that syllable sank in, stripping away the coldness of the data. The reality is undeniable. While Tomaso remains mute, the recording aligns perfectly with the victim's cardiac distress. The state is currently weighing the evidence to see if it warrants an indictment. Under the public microscope, they cannot afford a stumble. Nancy's memory demands a flawless legal pursuit. Still, they understand that a trial demands ironclad proof, not just theories. They are nearing a breakthrough, despite the unfinished wasteland excavation, and the fact that the burner phone's buyer remains a mystery. Furthermore, the forensic accountants are still digging through Nancy's complex financial records. A potential whistleblower is lurking, someone from Tomaso's inner circle who knows exactly what handled was meant to signify. A single testimony could shatter the defense as the wall of silence surrounding this crime finally begins to crumble. The full story remains unwritten. However, imminent revelations from the desert floor promise to flip the narrative entirely. Every secret buried in those dunes is about to surface, potentially sending this investigation down a whole new path. 3 days following Tomaso's address to the public, investigative units re-entered the arid wasteland. This mission utilized specialized equipment, including recovery canines, drones, and subsurface imaging technology. Yellow cordons fluttered amidst parched grains and sparse vegetation. An eerie stillness hung heavy in the scorching atmosphere. Detective Morales positioned herself by the unpaved trail where the vehicle's telemetry indicated a 9-minute stationary period. "Inspect this area," she murmured, signaling the dog handlers whose animals suddenly went completely rigid. Sitting is the universal indicator for a hit, prompting a silent, knowing nod from the canine's handler. A secondary unit was introduced, circling the perimeter briefly before planting itself on that identical patch of sand. With dual confirmations, the team cleared the topsoil, noting a patch that was significantly darker, indicating the ground had been disturbed. The texture felt loose and saturated, clearly tampered with recently, which led the team to call for shovels. The process was meticulous and fully documented, eventually revealing a hidden object roughly 2 feet below the surface. Instead of a body, they unearthed thick navy padding, the exact type of material already linked to fiber samples in the garage. This heavy quilted material lay buried. It was crumpled as though used but empty, forcing the lead detective to process this grim and critical discovery. This find provided the physical bridge connecting the residential evidence to this remote, desolate wasteland location. A delivery occurred, yet Nancy was absent, leaving only the wrapping as a haunting clue for the investigators to follow. Perhaps the plan was interrupted or transitioned, leading the forensic team to drastically widen their search grid area. Aerial units scanned the dry basins and ravines until a second discovery was located shortly before dusk. Roughly 30 yards away, a glinting metal object lay partially submerged in the parched, dusty earth. Specialists retrieved a damaged heart regulator whose identification numbers perfectly aligned with her medical history records. Silence fell over the headquarters when that fact was confirmed, because it meant her medical device was removed before being discarded. Still, her location remained unknown. This sparked a frightening theory that she was never intended to stay here. The 9-minute pause at 10:07 p.m. likely served as a transfer point rather than a final destination. Simultaneously, digital footprints revealed that at 10:15 p.m., Tomaso's smartphone established a brief wireless connection with an unidentified hardware unit. This 18-second handshake involved a different device rather than the internal systems of his own vehicle. Detectives now suspect a secondary automobile was present at the scene during that specific time window. If a handoff occurred, it confirms Nancy was moved and suggests the presence of an accomplice in the crime. Grand jurors reviewed the totality of the Navy padding, the discarded pacemaker, and the suspicious wireless link. Presented with her recorded plea for mercy, a juror reportedly noted that these cold logistics did not reflect a moment of panic. Calculated desert trips and burner phones are not typical signs of a heat-of-the-moment emotional reaction. Public scrutiny intensified as news crews and local reporters converged on the suspect's private residence. While Annie remained hidden, Savannah thanked the police for their continued and tireless dedication to the case. The family's tone shifted from hope to cold determination as the hunt for their mother continued. Meanwhile, authorities traced the origin of the burner phone back to its original retail point of purchase. Video feeds revealed a shadowed figure disguised by a ball cap and dark sunglasses. The cash-paying suspect appeared slightly taller and leaner than the primary person of interest being watched. This agile individual might be the same masked intruder seen lurking near the estate property earlier. Law enforcement is now auditing regional traffic cameras, searching for evidence of 2 distinct vehicles entering or departing the desert roads. Every frame is being scrutinized, with technicians magnifying light patterns for any hidden details or timestamps. Shifting back to February 1st, detectives are also re-examining the couple's final dinner together. Lab results showed her food was untainted, but Tomaso had surprisingly left his own portion completely untouched. Did nerves spoil his appetite? Or was the entire outing merely a staged performance for others? Since the legal changes were set for February 3rd, the first was likely a targeted date. It was the final 48-hour window before financial authority would have shifted away from his control. With this mounting desert evidence, prosecutors are preparing to issue formal criminal indictments very soon. Yet a crucial gap remains. Who drove the second vehicle? Whose identity was behind that burner phone? And who acknowledged that incoming text but chose not to reply? Detectives are now gearing up for another round with Tomaso. This time, they hold superior leverage with the desert-recovered device, the fabric, wireless logs, and those audio recordings. Once a suspect is pinned down by tangible evidence, their narrative usually begins to crumble. As stories shift, the reality often surfaces. The mystery now is whether he will stick to the panic defense or name his accomplice. There was definitely another person present. The digital footprint confirms it beyond a doubt. The desert terrain hints at it, and the time for secrets is fading. Yet, Nancy remains missing, leaving the file agonizingly unfinished. This upcoming sit-down will likely determine the ultimate outcome of the investigation. The events that unfolded within that room as the detective presented the monitor shell require a very close look. We must carefully analyze the psychological shift that occurred when authorities forced Tomaso to face that broken device. The interview space was cramped, featuring drab walls and a single cold steel desk. 3 chairs were arranged around the table while a lens captured every movement. Tomaso sat flanked by counsel as Morales entered. She set down a transparent plastic pouch containing the mangled heart monitor, which was warped and caked in gritty sand. Remaining silent at first, she simply nudged the evidence toward him. Tomaso glanced down, and his composure shattered instantly. For the first time during this ordeal, his stoic facade crumbled. His jaw clenched tightly as his lungs struggled for air. "We pulled this from the wasteland," Detective Morales noted quietly. The room went dead silent. She argued that simple fright doesn't lead to desert trails. Panic doesn't hide linens or involve a secondary transport vehicle. Tomaso fixed his gaze on the tabletop. After a quick huddle with his attorney, he finally straightened his back. "Killing her wasn't the goal," he whispered. Those syllables lingered heavily. He didn't deny the death, only the intent. Morales leaned in, asking for the partner's identity. The wall clock's rhythmic ticking felt deafening during the long lull. Squeezing his eyelids shut, he confessed to having company. Despite his lawyer's protests, the admission kept flowing. He reached out to him post-dispute. That brief 14-second interaction linked the burner device to a shadowy figure. It was a calculated move. "He arrived to assist me," Tomaso claimed. "Assist with what exactly?" the officer pressed. "Dealing with the complication." That vague terminology spoke volumes, revealing a far darker sequence of events than previously known. He recounted how Nancy took a tumble mid-argument, hitting her skull as he spiraled into a frantic, irrational state. He insisted she was breathing momentarily. He claimed to be paralyzed by indecision regarding what the next step should be. Instead of dialing 911, he contacted a business associate who was indebted to him. That man arrived shortly thereafter. That explains the extra car, the wireless pings, and the removal of the bedding from the home. The partner allegedly proposed faking a home invasion, killing the security feeds, and extracting the medical device. "Make it look like a burglary," he supposedly suggested. Together, they relocated her. This part haunts the investigation team. Tomaso asserted that her breathing finally ceased while they were still in the garage area. Not in the hallway or the kitchen, but the garage. She might have been alive while being handled and transported. Legal experts are dissecting that claim. Failing to seek medical aid for a living victim changes the entire criminal grade. The officers pushed for a specific location. "Where did you put her?" they demanded. His eyes welled up as he denied knowing. He claimed the associate took over after their rendezvous in the desert. Tomaso insisted he returned home alone, while the other individual transported Nancy to a final, unknown destination. Though the name has not been publicized, the authorities have now successfully identified this mystery man. A warrant was signed for obstructing justice, tampering with proof, and felony manslaughter for Tomaso Cioni. The accomplice is now the primary focus. Recovery teams are widening their perimeter. The wall of silence is falling. It is a tale of desperate acts and loyalty turned toxic. Nancy Guthrie was more than just a news headline. She was an 84-year-old matriarch, a grandmother, and a person betrayed by those she should have trusted. Her final minutes were likely consumed by terror. That recorded plea, "Please," proves this is no mere entertainment drama. This is a human tragedy. To this day, Nancy's remains have not been recovered by the authorities. The search party continues its grim work in the wilderness. The prosecution is building its case as the truth emerges in court. Justice is coming, and the silence has broken. Anyone holding clues regarding Nancy Guthrie's vanishing should reach out to Tucson authorities or provide a secret lead through anonymous channels. Such tragedies serve as a vital wake-up call to safeguard our vulnerable senior family members. Stay alert for monetary abuse and voice concerns immediately. Nancy needs clarity. Her relatives need peace of mind. Our team intends to track every single update as this investigation unfolds. Support the cause for fairness by circulating this report, sparking interest, and following us to expose secrets buried in the shadows. We refuse to rest until every fact finally comes to light. Nancy Guthrie was not just a headline. She was a grandmother, a mother, a woman who baked cookies and sang in church. She trusted the people closest to her, and that trust became the very weapon used against her. This is not a rare story. Every single day, thousands of elderly men and women across this country face silent exploitation inside their own homes at the hands of those they love. Financial abuse, manipulation, control. It begins quietly, a signature here, a password there, until one day, everything is gone. The warning signs are always there. Isolation from family, sudden changes to wills or bank accounts, a caregiver who answers every question before the elder can speak. If you see something, say something. One phone call could save a life. One conversation at the dinner table could change everything. Our elders built the world we stand on. They deserve dignity. They deserve safety. They deserve to grow old without fear. Do not wait for a tragedy to act. Check on your parents. Listen to your grandparents. Look them in the eyes and ask, "Are you okay?" Because for Nancy, no one asked in time. Let her story be the reason someone else's story ends differently. Justice for Nancy. Protection for every elder who cannot yet speak for themselves.